Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for coming to listen to us, to the stories from south of the Vindhyas. Stories from south of the Vindhyas are like summer holidays to me. It's like visiting one's relatives, like listening to my grandmother, like tasting homemade pickles. In other words, it feels like home. Home which prepares us for the world. Home that makes us want to leave it and explore the world. The stories, as told by Vaidehi Rao, Sarah Abubekar, and Benjamin, take us through experiences of the home and the world through the eyes of women and men we relate to very well. These are stories in Kannada and Malayalam as they have experienced them or have seen happening in their own worlds. So I am delighted to be in conversation with these three extraordinary writers and to introduce them to you. Sarah Abubekar is a popular Kannada novelist, essayist, and translator. Some of her noted works include Chandragiriya Teeradalli. The English translation was Breaking Ties, and her autobiography Hottu Kanduva Munna. She has also translated 6 major works from Malayalam to Kannada, and her novels deal with the trials and tribulations in the lives of Muslims living in Karnataka, and she's known for boldly writing about the difficulties and injustices faced by women in these situations. She has won several awards, including the Karnataka Sahitya Academy Award of Honor, the Karnataka Rajyotsava Award, and several other accolades. Since 1994, she has been publishing her work under her own banner, Chandragiri Prakashana. Thank you so much, Sarah ma'am, for being here with us this morning. Vaidehi Rao is a well-known Kannada writer and poet. Her work spans over 35 publications of short stories, poems, novels, translations, biographies, and children's plays. And she has been conferred with the highest award for her extensive contribution to Kannada literature by the Karnataka government. So thank you again, Vaidehi ma'am, for being here. Benny Daniel, and he writes under the pen name Benjamin, has published extensively novels, short stories, and so on, and his most well-known work is Aada Jeevitham, translated as Goat Days. His work is known for his realistic and incisive portrayal of the life of Malayalis living in the Gulf. Thank you again, Benjamin, for being here. So today, in this discussion, we will talk about a few key aspects of their work, the stories they have been telling, and if time permits, they will also be reading very small extracts from their works. At the end, we will take questions from the audience. Thank you again for being here this morning. I will get into the discussion right away. My first question is to all the three of you. And before we get into the discussion, let me also welcome Bhagyashree, who is the translator. She will be translating Vaidehi ma'am and Sarah ma'am because today they would be talking to us in Kannada, and Bhagyashree will be translating them for us. Thank you again, Bhagyashree. So the first question is to all the three of you, all the three writers. What kind of stories did you want to write? And I will start with you, Sarah ma'am. What kind of stories did you want to write?
ನಾನು ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯ ಕ್ಷೇತ್ರ ಪ್ರವೇಶಿಸುವ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಬದುಕ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅವರ ಬದುಕಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೇನು ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಎಂಬುದು ಕನ್ನಡ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲೂ ಪ್ರಕಟಗೊಂಡಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಆಗ ಬರೀತಾ ಇದ್ದವರು ಕನ್ನಡ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ
The earlier one was better.
ಆಗ ಕನ್ನಡ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಬರಹಗಾರರು ಇದ್ದವರು ಬಳುವಾರು ಮೊಹಮ್ಮದ್ ಕುಂಜಿ ಮತ್ತು ಫಕೀರ್ ಮೊಹಮ್ಮದ್ ಕಟ್ಪಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ಇಬ್ಬರು. ಅವರು ಮಹಿಳೆಯರ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಗತಿಗಳ ಕುರಿತು ಏನು ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಆಳವಾಗಿ ಬರೆದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನನಗೆ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಮತ್ತು 1980ರವರೆಗೂ ಕನ್ನಡ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರ ಕುರಿತು ಅಂತಹ ಏನು ಆಳವಾದ ಒಂದು ಅವರ ಚಿಂತನೆ, ಅವರು ಏನು ಅನುಭವಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವರ ಬದುಕಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಎಂಬುದನ್ನು ಎಲ್ಲೂ ಕಾಣಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಯಾರೂ ಆ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಮಾಡಿಯೇ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಹಲವಾರು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳನ್ನು ಎದುರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಒಂದು ಅನಕ್ಷರತೆ ಮತ್ತು ಬಡತನ ಅದಂತೂ ಹೇಗೂ ಇದ್ದೇ ಇದೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಧಾರ್ಮಿಕವಾಗಿ ಬಹಳ ಸುಲಭದ ವಿವಾಹ ವಿಚ್ಛೇದನ ಮತ್ತು ಪೋಲಿಗಮಿ, ಬಹುಪತ್ನಿತ್ವ, ಈ ಎರಡೂ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳಿಂದಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಬಹಳ ಕಷ್ಟ, ನರಕವನ್ನು ಅನುಭವಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಈ ವಿಷಯಗಳೆಡೆಗೆ ಇಡೀ ಸಮಾಜದ ಗಮನ ಸೆಳೀಬೇಕು ಮತ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲ ದೇಶದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಜನರ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರ ಗಮನ ಸೆಳೀಬೇಕು ಎಂಬ ಕಾರಣದಿಂದಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಬರಹ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭಿಸಿದೆ. ಒಮ್ಮೆ ತಲಾಖಾದ ಬಳಿಕ ಆ ಗಂಡ ಹೆಂಡತಿಯರು ಸರಿಯಾಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ, ಪುನಃ ರಾಜಿಯಾಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಆ ಹೆಂಡತಿ, ಆ ಮಹಿಳೆ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬನನ್ನು ಮದುವೆಯಾಗಿ ಬಂದವಳಾಗಿರಬೇಕು ಎಂಬ ಒಂದು ಕಾರಣದಿಂದಾಗಿ ಮದುವೆಗಳು ರಾಜಿಯಾಗಲು ಸಾಧ್ಯವಾಗ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಕೆಲವು ಸಂದರ್ಭಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲವು ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗಾಗಿ ಅಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಸಂದರ್ಭವನ್ನು ಒಪ್ಪಿಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದರೂ ಕೂಡ ಬಹಳ ಕಷ್ಟ, ಬಹಳ ತೊಂದರೆಗಳನ್ನು ಅನುಭವಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದರು. ಇಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಯೆಡೆಗೆ ಸಮಾಜದ ಗಮನ ಸೆಳೆಯಬೇಕೆಂಬ ಕಾರಣದಿಂದಾಗಿ ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಪ್ರಥಮ ಕಾದಂಬರಿಯನ್ನು ಬರೆದೆ.
When I started writing, not much was being written about Muslim in general, and particularly about Muslim women. There were a couple of writers like Bolwar Muhammad Kunni who did write about Muslim society, but not very little was written in depth about Muslim women who had problems very specific to them. Apart from issues of illiteracy and poverty, there was also the issue of polygamy, and many women compromised with many of these issues, and easy divorce. So many women compromised with these issues because they had they had to stay in the family and they had no way of getting out of their situations. So till the 1980s, there were hardly any Muslim voices available, Muslim women voices available in Kannada literature. It was at this point that I started writing about this society and women, to draw attention of the society to this aspect, and also to enrich Kannada literature and bring in this new voice into the Kannada literary field. Anything else?
And yes, new voice indeed. Thank you so much, Sai ma'am. Yes, Vaidehi.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಕನ್ನಡ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕಿವಿ ಬೀಳಲಿ ಅಂತ ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ನಾನು ತುಂಬ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕುಟುಂಬದಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಟ್ಟಿದ್ರಿಂದ ಮತ್ತು ನನ್ನ ಸುತ್ತಮುತ್ತಲಿನ ಊರು ಕೂಡ ಸಣ್ಣ ಗ್ರಾಮೀಣ ಪ್ರದೇಶ. ನಾನು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿದ್ದು ಅವಜ್ಞೆ, ಅವಮಾನ, ಹಿಂಸೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಹೆಂಗಸರಿಗೆ ಇತಿಹಾಸವೇ ಇಲ್ಲದಿರುವ ಒಂದು ಚೋದ್ಯ. ಇದನ್ನು ನಾನು ಅನೇಕ ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗಳ ಮೂಲಕ, ಮಾದರಿ ಮೂಲಕ, ನಾನು ಸಣ್ಣವಳಿರುವಾಗ ಮನಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಬಿದ್ದ ಅನೇಕ ಸಂಗತಿಗಳನ್ನು ಒಳಗಿಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೆ. ನಾನು ದೊಡ್ಡವಳಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದ ಹಾಗೆ ನನ್ನೊಳಗಿರುವ ಅನೇಕ ಸಂಶಯಗಳನ್ನು, ಸಂದೇಹಗಳನ್ನು, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಯಾಕೆ ಹೀಗಾಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ನಾನು ಬರೆಯೋಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಆವಾಗ ನಂಗೆ ಕಾಣ್ತು, ಇದು ಹೆಂಗಸರ ಮೇಲಿನ ಆಗುವ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ದೌರ್ಜನ್ಯ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಹಿಂಸೆ, ಇವೆಲ್ಲವೂ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಹೆಣ್ಣನ್ನು ಒಳಗೆ ದಬ್ಬಿ ಇಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ. ನಂಗೆ ಆವಾಗ ಮುಂಚೆ ಸಣ್ಣದಾಗ ಗೊತ್ತೇ ಆಗ್ತಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾವು ಗಂಡಸರ ಪಾರ್ಟಿನೇ ಆಗಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ದಿವಸ ದೊಡ್ಡಲಾಗೋವರೆಗೂ ನಾನು ಗಂಡಸರ ಪಾರ್ಟಿನೇ ಆಗಿದ್ದೆ. ಹೆಂಗಸರು ಬೈಯೋ ಹೆಂಗಸರಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಜೋರು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಇಷ್ಟು ಗಲಾಟೆ ಆಡಬೇಕು ನಾನೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೆ. ಅದು ನಂಗೆ ದೊಡ್ಡವಳಾದಾಗೆ, ನನ್ನ ಕಣ್ಣು ತೆರಿತಾ ಹೋದಾಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಅಮ್ಮ ಕೂಡ ನನಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆದ್ಲು. ನಾನು ಅದನ್ನು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಬರಿತಾ ಹೋದಾಗೆ ಆ ಸ್ತ್ರೀಯರ ಒಳಗಿನ, ಆ ಆಪ್ರೆಸ್ಡ್ ಸ್ತ್ರೀಯರ ಒಳಗಿನ ಆ ಲಲಿತಾ ಶಕ್ತಿ, ಅವರ ಸ್ವಂತ ಶಕ್ತಿ ನನಗೆ ದರ್ಶನ ಆಯಿತು. ಅದು ನಾನು ಪಡೆದ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಲಾಭ ಅಂತ ನಂಗೆ ಅನಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
She says she's speaking in Kannada today because she wants you all to hear the language. So she comes from a small village and lived in a very large household. And she, all through her childhood, she was witness to how women were either oppressed or insulted. And there was no history for women at all. But she kept on coming across small examples and big examples of this playing themselves out. But she never asked questions as a young person. In fact, her reasoning itself was largely like that of men. She would often ask, why do women behave like this? But as she grew up, she understood that there is a larger societal context for this. There is a larger context for violence and oppression. And these were intended to confine women to their own homes. So these were questions she began to ask as she grew up. And in this process, she has understood women and understood the context in which women's oppression takes place. And also she has understood her own mother. And the strength of these women who are oppressed but still are able to find strength within themselves to, to live and to articulate.
Right. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you. As you know, I am living abroad since 1992, that is from last 21 years. I start my writing abroad only when I am in school or college days. I never write anything. I start my writing in abroad. I am living in Bahrain. What is my intention on writing that first of all, most of the writers, I am not blaming anyone, most of the writers going abroad and living good there and telling the bad stories of India. This is what normally happening. But I am trying to tell the stories of abroad, that is the expatriate life. We have so many cinemas stories telling that expatriate, the glittering part of the expatriate life. But we do have so many other experience also. 90% of the expatriates, especially in the Gulf, they are leading a very, very pathetic life. So it is not portrayed well till so many days. So this was my first intention, to portray the life of the expatriates, especially the expatriates Malayalis in the Gulf. From last 50 years, the Malayalis are there in Gulf, and almost maybe more than 50 lakhs of people are living there, and none of the life was portrayed yet. And the other thing, I have to tell that I am addressing to the expatriate itself, because most of the expatriates are very sad on their condition, saying that we are leading a expatriate life and their frustrations and so many things are there. But at the same time, I have to tell the expatriate that we do have a home to back. But many of the expatriates, we have to differentiate the expatriate life and exil life. Most of the expatriates, they are thinking that we are conducting or proceeding a exil life. But the exil is actually extremely different from the expatriate life. What I try to mention that, or what I try to tell those expatriates, that we do have a home to back, but many of the people from around the world, they don't have enough. There is a home to back. Maybe due to the calamity, maybe due to the internal riots, maybe political reasons, and people are throwing out from their own home. But many of the expatriate life, especially from India, they are not gone out for any political reason, but because of the sake of their own life, or for a betterment of life. So we have to be more satisfied with So I am telling the stories of Palestinian life, or a Nigerian girl who was thrown out from their country due to the internal politics, or a Nepali girl, or in a wider range. I am telling in a wider range to explain that we do have a better life than others in the other country. This is what my intention in my stories and novel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. So, what is fascinating about this panel is also that while Benjamin talks about, especially when you're talking about Malayalis in the Gulf, you're talking about the men who left their homes to make money and, basically to make them better homes. And while in your fiction or in your short stories, we're talking about women who were at home, but then who felt quite out of place in their own homes because of various reasons. So my next question is actually to both Vaidehi and Sarah here. Both of you have written extensively about women's issues. We are talking about, in your case, Muslim women. And in your case, we are talking about these kitchen stories, these the Brahmin households, Brahmin widows, and so on and so forth. Very relevant women's issues. Yet, your styles are very, very different, right? You are known for your bold and very direct portrayal, while you are known for a softer, a very subtle kind of portrayal. To what extent do you think your backgrounds have influenced your respective styles?
ನಾನು ಬೆಳೆದ ನನ್ನ ವಾತಾವರಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಳೆದ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಗ್ರೌಂಡ್ ಹೇಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ, ಅದೇ ಈ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಬಹಳ ಬಡತನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು, ಅನಕ್ಷರತೆ ಬಹಳ, ಮತ್ತು ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಇಂತಹ ಈ ಗಂಡನಿಂದಾಗಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ತೊಂದರೆ ಆಗ್ತಾಯಿತ್ತು, ಈ ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಹೇಗೆ ತುಳಿಯಲ್ಪಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಎಂಬುದನ್ನು ನಾನು ನೋಡುತ್ತಾ ಬೆಳೆದೆ. ಇದನ್ನು ಏನು ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ, ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಏನು ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ಹೀಗೇ ನಡೀತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಬರ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು, ಅವರ ಗಂಡಂದಿರು ತಲಾಖ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು. ಗಂಡನ ತಲಾಖ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಮೇಲೆ ಆ ಮಕ್ಕಳನ್ನು ಅವರು ಹೇಗೋ ಸಾಕಿಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು, ಅವರು ಏನೇನೋ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು, ಬಡತನ, ಬಹಳ ಬಡತನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು. ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ನೋಡುತ್ತಾ ಬೆಳೆದವಳು. ಇಂತಹ ಈ ಸಮಾಜದ ಈ ಚಿಂತಾಜನಕ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಯಿಂದ ನಮ್ಮ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಮಕ್ಕಳನ್ನು ಹೇಗೆ ಹೊರಗೆ ತರುವುದು ಎಂಬ ಒಂದು ಕಾರಣದಿಂದಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಬರೀಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಓದುವ ಹವ್ಯಾಸ ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಇತ್ತು. ಬಹಳ ಕಥೆ ಕಾದಂಬರಿಗಳನ್ನು ಓದುವುದು ಬಹಳ ಚಿಕ್ಕಂದಿನಿಂದಲೂ ನಾನು ಓದುವ ಹವ್ಯಾಸವನ್ನು ಬೆಳೆಸಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬರೆದರೂ ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, ಬರಹಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಏನಾದರೂ ಮಾಡ್ತೇನೆ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಅಂದುಕೊಂಡಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ನನಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತಾ ನನಗೆ ಇಂಥ ಈ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳು ಬಹಳ ಆಳವಾಗಿ ನನ್ನನ್ನು ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ತಟ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದವು. ಇದನ್ನು ಏನಾದರೂ ಮಾಡಿ, ಯಾರು ಸಮಾಜದ ಇವರು ಧಾರ್ಮಿಕ ಗುರುಗಳಾಗಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಸಮಾಜದ ಹಿರಿಯರಾಗಲಿ ಬೇರೆಯವರಾಗಲಿ ಇಂತಹ ಈ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳೆಡೆಗೆ ಯಾರೂ ಗಮನ ಹರಿಸುತ್ತಲೂ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊನೆಯ ಪಕ್ಷ ಸಮಾಜದ ಗಮನವನ್ನು ಅದರ ಸೆಳೆಯುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಕೃತಿಯನ್ನು ಏನಾದರೂ ರಚಿಸಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿಕೊಂಡು ನಾನು ಬರೆದೆ. ಆದರೆ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನನಗೆ ಬರಹಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾವ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಗಳು ನನಗೆ ಅಂಥ ಪ್ರೋತ್ಸಾಹ ನೀಡಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಕತೆ ಬರೆದು ಕಳಿಸಿದಾಗ ಯಾರೂ ಅದನ್ನು ಪ್ರಕಟಿಸಲೂ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಲಂಕೇಶ್ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭವಾದಾಗ 1980ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಪ್ರಥಮವಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಬರೆದಿದ್ದೆ ಕಮ್ಯೂನಲ್ ಹಾರ್ಮನಿ, ಕೋಮು ಸೌಹಾರ್ದದ ವಿಷಯ ಕುರಿತು ನಾನು ಲೇಖನ ಬರೆದೆ. ಅದು ಕೂಡ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಯಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಇಷ್ಟು ದೂರವಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ನಡುವೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಇಂತಹ ಕಂದಕ ಸೃಷ್ಟಿಯಾಯಿತು, ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಊರಿನಲ್ಲಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಕೇರಳದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತಹ ಕಮ್ಯೂನಲ್ ಘರ್ಷಣೆ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಹಳ ಸುಲಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಕಮ್ಯೂನಲ್ ಹಾರ್ಮನಿ ಕೇರಳದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಈಗಲೂ ಸಾಧಾರಣ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆ, ಆದರೆ ಮೂಲಭೂತವಾದಿಗಳು ಅದನ್ನು ಬಹಳ ಕೆಡಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆದರೆ ಆ ಕುರಿತು ಕೂಡ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಒತ್ತಡ ಇತ್ತು ನನ್ನ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ. ಇದು ಯಾಕೆ ಹೀಗೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಂತೂ ಬಹಳ ದೂರವಾಗಿದ್ದರು ಈ ಎರಡು ಸಮಾಜಗಳು, ಇದನ್ನು ಹತ್ತಿರ ತರುವುದು ಹೇಗೆ ಅಂತ. ಅದು ಕೂಡ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಸಮಾಜ ಒಂದು ಇದಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಹಾಗೆ ಲಂಕೇಶ್ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆ ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಲೇಖನ ನೋಡಿ ನಾನು ಅವರಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಲೇಖನ ಬರೆದು ಕಳಿಸಿದೆ. ಅವರು ಮತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನು ನೀನು ಒಂದು 3-4 ಲೇಖನ ಕಳಿಸಿದ ಬಳಿಕ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಕಾದಂಬರಿ ಬರೀರಿ ಅಂತ ಅವರೇ ನನಗೆ ಪ್ರೋತ್ಸಾಹ ಕೊಟ್ಟರು. ಆಗ ನನ್ನ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕಾದಂಬರಿ, ನಾನು ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವ ವಿಷಯವನ್ನು ಬರೆದಿದ್ರು ಬಹುಶಃ ನಾನು ಬರೆದ ಮೇಲೆ ನನ್ನ ಸಮಾಜದ ಸಮಾಜದ ಗಂಡಸರು ನನ್ನ ಮೇಲೆ ಏನಾದರೂ ತೊಂದರೆ ಆಗಬಹುದು, ನನಗೆ ಮುಂದೆ ಬರೀಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಗದೇ ಇರಬಹುದು ಅಂತ ಅಂದುಕೊಂಡು ಅದೇ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಯನ್ನು ಎತ್ತಿಕೊಂಡು ನಾನು ಪ್ರಪ್ರಥಮ ಕಾದಂಬರಿಯನ್ನು ಬರೆದೆ. ಇದು ನನ್ನ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಗ್ರೌಂಡ್.
It was my environment that made me write. As she said earlier, it was the Muslim women's condition and women poverty and their suffering at the hands of their husbands and triple talaq, which they put up with, was what made her constantly think about it. And it was the condition of these women was so bad that she kept hoping that she would be able to at least articulate it in an effort to bring it to the notice of the larger society and also perhaps change it in the process. But she read a lot as a young girl, but she didn't really write for a very long time. Her first writing was in this magazine called Lankesh Patrike, which was incidentally started by a very well-known writer who eventually became a firebrand journalist. This is just an aside. And her first article was on communal harmony. It was published in 1981. This was a subject that was worrying her intensely between Kerala and Karnataka border, where she grew up. As she wrote some three-part series on this issue, the editor of the magazine suggested that she write a novel. So that is when she thought of writing a novel. Her first novel was thus written, but she had her own apprehensions because she expected some backlash from the men of her own community. So, but fortunately, I don't think that happened. But there were initially a lot of problems with publication. Not many people were willing to, publish her works until Lankesh Patrike first did it, and then her novel later.
ನಾನು ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬರಿಗೆ ಬರೆಯಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಲ್ಲ, ನನಗೆ ಬರ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇರುವಾಗ ನಾನು ಹೇಗೆ ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿ ಬೊಬ್ಬೆ ಹೊಡೆದು ಅಥವಾ ನನ್ನ ಇದನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ನನ್ನೊಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ನಾನೇ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿರಿಂದ ನಾನು ಸೈಲೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದೆ, ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ಡ್. ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರ ಐ ಡೋಂಟ್ ನೋ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ನನ್ನ ಜಗತ್ತಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದದ್ದೇ ಸೈಲೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ಡ್ ಆಗಿ ಇರೋ ಒಂದು ಕುಟುಂಬ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕುಟುಂಬ, ಅದು ಲಾರ್ಜ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ, ಅದು ಗಲಾಟೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಹೊಡೆದು ಹೋಗ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಆ ಥರದ ಒಂದು ಕುಟುಂಬ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಬಂದು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಂದರೆ, ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಅದನ್ನು.
ಓಕೆ. I started writing more by way of conversation with myself. So a sense of balance and silence was necessary. And I was part of a large family where silence and balance seemed to be the defining features. So if there had been too much loudness, the family would have probably fallen apart.
ತುಂಬ ಜನ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ಮನೆಗೆ. ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಕಥೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಒಂದು ಹಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಮಧ್ಯಾಹ್ನ ಬರ್ತಿದ್ರು. ಮಧ್ಯಾಹ್ನ ಹೊರ ಜಗಲಿಲಿ ಬಂದು ಹೀಗೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಅನಂತ ಶಯನ ಥರ ಹೀಗೆ ಮಲಗ್ತಿದ್ರು. ಮಲಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಅಮ್ಮ ಮಹಾಲಕ್ಷ್ಮಿ ಬಾ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಅಮ್ಮ ಮಲಗ್ತಿದ್ರು. ಪಾಪ ರೆಸ್ಟೇ ಇಲ್ಲ, ತುಂಬ ಮಕ್ಕಳೊಳಗೆ ರೆಸ್ಟೇ ಇಲ್ಲ.
So she wants to narrate a story. It was a large family and many people came to the household, and there was one woman who came every day and slept in an Ananta Shayana posture. I think she'll have to explain how it is. And summoned her mother to come out.
ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅವಳು ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ಲು ಅಂದರೆ, ಮಹಾಲಕ್ಷ್ಮಮ್ಮ ಎಂಥದ್ದು ಗೊತ್ತಾ, ನಿನ್ನೆ ರಾತ್ರಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ರು ಬಿಡಲಿಲ್ಲ ಮರರೆ, ನಾನು ಕಡೆಗೆ ಹಲಸಿನ ಮರ ಹತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡೆ. ಇಲ್ಲ ನೀ ಬಾ, ಅಷ್ಟು ಬೇಗೆಲ್ಲ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಆತಿಲ್ಲ ಬಾ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಯಾರ. ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ಲು ಬರಲ್ಲ, ಬೆಳಿಗ್ಗೆ ಸಾಯನ ಬಂದದ್ದಂತ.
Bhagyashree, I hope you wouldn't be censoring any of it. Looks like there were some very interesting bits.
This instant translation is tricky. So she would summon her mother and say, you know what happened yesterday? I refused and I climbed up the jackfruit tree. He told me, come down, it's all right, children don't happen so easily, but I refused and stayed on the tree until morning. That's the best I can do.
ಅಷ್ಟು ಹೇಳುವಾಗ ಕೂಡ ಅವಳು ನಗ್ತಿದ್ರು, ಅಮ್ಮನ ಕೇಳಿ ನಕ್ಕರು, ನಾವು ನಗ್ತಿದ್ವಿ, ನಮ್ಗೆ ಏನು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ರು, ನಾವು ನಗ್ತಿದ್ವಿ.
Both the women laughed, but the children didn't understand anything and yet they laughed along.
ಆದರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ ನೋಡಿ, ಒಳಗಿಂದ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ದುಃಖ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು. ಇದನ್ನು ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಹೇಳುವಾಗ ದುಃಖ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಎಂಥದಿಲ್ಲ, ಆದರೆ ಒಳಗಿಂದ ಒಂದು ದುಃಖದ ಸ್ರೋತ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ನನಗೆ ಆ ಕತೆ, ಒಳಗಿನ ಕತೆ ನನ್ನ ಕಣ್ಣ ದೊಡ್ಡವಳಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ.
So there was a sense of balance in the whole narration, but still there was a great lot of suffering. I mean, there was this, what shall I say? There was a shruti, if I may say that, of suffering that ran through this narrative, which she has tried to reflect in her own stories.
ಗಂಡ ಹೆಂಡತಿ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ರಿಲೇಷನ್, ಗಂಡ ಹೆಂಡತಿ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ರಿಲೇಷನ್, ವಾಟ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ರಿಲೇಷನ್ ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಗಂಡನ ಹೊಗಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಬಾಯಿ ತುಂಬ ಹೊಗಳ್ತಾರೆ ಕೆಲವರು, ಅವ್ರ ಕಣ್ಣಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಳಕೇ ಇರಲ್ಲ.
The husband-wife relationship, what kind of a relationship is this? There are women who sing praises of their husbands, but there's no light in their eyes.
ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಒಬ್ಬರಿದ್ರು, ಗಂಡ ದೂರ ಹೋದಂತ, ನಾನು ಮಗಳು ಸತ್ತೋಯ್ತು ಮರ್ರೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹುಷಾರಿರಲ್ಲ, ಸತ್ತೋಯ್ತನ್ ಗೊತ್ತಿತ್ತು ಮೊದಲೇ ಸತ್ತೋಗತ್ತಂತ, ಅವ್ರು ಇರಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಹೋಯಿದ್ರಿ, ಎಷ್ಟೊತ್ತರ ಬರಲ್ಲ, ನಾನೇ ಚೀತ ಇಟ್ಟೆ ಸುಟ್ಟೆ ಮರರೆ ಅಂತ.
There was one woman who narrated how her child had died and the husband was away, and she just came to her mother and said, no, he was away, I couldn't do anything, I couldn't wait for him, I lit the pyre myself. And she's saying that in her dialect, which is unfortunately not translatable.
ಅಷ್ಟು ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಅಷ್ಟು ನೋ ಪೇನ್ಫುಲ್, ಫುಲ್ಲಿ ದಿಸ್ ಒನ್, ವಾಟ್ ಟು ಸೇ, ಐ ಕಾಂಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ರೆಸ್. I had to write about it. I wrote a story about Nati, actress.
Do I need to translate that? That is in English. So she says basically she had to write it. That pain had to be articulated, so she started writing.
Right.
Story, actress.
The actress, the story title, The Actress.
Okay, thank you so much, Bhagyashree, and thank you, Vaidehi ma'am. So, as we can see, the experiences and I think growing up in the kind of communities that both these women did played a great role in their literary styles as well. Well, yours is, you know, as you said, silence, where silence played a big role, more balanced, and there is at the same time a very subtle thread of protest. While in Sarah's case, it is a little more bold and more pronounced. In your case, Benjamin, you said that you wanted to tell the story of the Malayali in the Gulf. How about your own experiences of working there and your own life? What did you think? Did you think that, and you also said earlier that you wanted to make a difference between exile and expatriate. So, how was your own experience and how did that come into your writing?
Okay, as I told earlier, I was there almost 21 years. A lot of experience with me. And the thing is, better I have to read a portion from one of my English translated work, 100ly translated work, and I will come to the point later. Just shall I read one?
Yeah, please go ahead. So this is a passage from God Days.
Yeah, this is the passage from God Days, and this is the story of an expatriate guy who lived in a desert for almost 3.5 years with the gods only. That is his life. He actually, his intention was to make money for his family, but unfortunately he kidnapped from the airport, and he went to the desert and he lived a pathetic life there. So I am just reading a portion. I think this is the essence of the whole novel, but I just read it from there. Winter was also the time when I learned that it was impossible to wipe out the life on this earth, whatever man's misdeeds. For how many months had this desert been lying under scorching heat? There had been no sign of life on these burning sands. As the cold wind blew, signaling summer's end, a green carpet surfaced on the dry sand. This was within 2 days of rain. It was as if all the scent of life had been laying dormant beneath the brown surface, straining to hear the music of resurrection. Cactus, creepers, rock fungi, touch-me-nots, bushes with shiny leaves, After from the and from the end of the sky came flocks of birds that spread their long wings, warbling swallows, chattering green parrots, pair of cooing doves. Where did they all come from? The realization that those plants and animals had been lain quietly, preserving their lives withstanding the heat of desert, filling me with delight. I saw with my own eyes how those little plants grow big, bore flowers and fruit, and concealed the life for the future in the womb of earth. How much I admired them. Those plants taught me life's great lesson of hope. They whispered to me, Najib, adopted son of the desert, like us, you too must preserve your life and wrestle with this desert. Hot wind and scorching days will pass. Don't surrender to them. Don't grow weary. And you might have to pay with your own life. Don't give in. Lay half dead as if meditating. Feign nothingness. Convey the impression that you will never resurrect. Secretly appeal to Allah the Merciful. He will recognize your presence. He will hear your cries. And finally, an opportune moment will come for you. This hot wind will blow away and heat will dissipate. The cold wind of time will beckon you. Then, only then should you slowly raise your head from the earth, announce your presence, and then quickly spring to freedom. Bloom and come to fruit in the morrow. I lend my ears to the words of little plants. I waited patiently for the opportune moment.
Thank you so much. So that is about Najib in Goat Days, and as he's reconciling with his life in desert, and he sees hope in what he sees around them, in him, the life that he sees growing in the desert. So there we can see the landscape coming in beautifully, and obviously the desert plays a significant role in your works. Would you say that it has influenced almost all your writing?
Story writing, especially in the landscaping. I am very keen about the landscaping of the place, and whatever the story, if it is a short story or if it is a novel, then I am very much keen on the landscape of the story. It should be understandably. And I studied well also for this. I am living in a island country, Bahrain. I never been in a desert at all when I am writing this novel. But the readers are telling the desert is portrayed well because it is because of my studies behind and each novel I study well about the landscape. And it is for me landscape is very important. But at the same time, I am not writing for the landscape, for the sake of landscape. The story, I plan a story first, and then the landscape will along with the story only. Then not for the sake of landscape I am writing. But landscape means it should not be a desert, or it should not be a wide city or something. Maybe it is a small room itself, the landscape, wherever the story happens, that is the landscape. But end of the story, after reading the story, the reader must know each nook and corner of the room or the place, and it is very much familiar to the reader as like their own home or their own place. This is what my intention on the storytelling or the landscaping and all that. As you asked before, what is the story you are telling, or what is your intention is, I do have so many experience in the desert. I mean in the expatriate life, how they are leading their life and all. But as in Kerala, many of them are they knows what life are leading. At the same time, the expatriate, they are hiding their life to their home. Most of the people in Kerala, they don't know what life they are leading. The expatriate they are leading in Gulf. Most of the guys don't know even what job they are doing. In this novel, there is a letter. Actually, I had to read that portion. There is a letter saying that I am leading a good life here. I do have so many things and things. This is that letter is completely wrong, and this is what the expatriate people are telling to their family.
Right.
Actually, they are always showing their good face and showing their glitterings and coming with good wristwatch and cooling glass and show off. But actually, their life is so pathetic there. So I think that letter that is the good example for our life in Gulf.
Right. Thank you so much, Benjamin. So we also have a huge shortage of time. So what I would do is, I mean, just as we have the landscape coming in there, we know the Mangalore landscape coming into the border between Kerala and Karnataka coming into Sarah's life, and of course the little lovely towns of Karnataka coming into your stories. So I would request you to read a very small extract if possible, where you could give us a glimpse of the wonderful experiences you were describing earlier, and then we will open it to the audience where the writers will take questions from them. 3 minutes, yes, thank you.
1 minute. This is a story called, a memory called Ammachi. Ammachi is a girl, a young girl, fatherless girl, who is imbued with a spirit of rebellion and a strong sense of individuality. Raped and apparently subdued by Venkapaya, she is forced to marry him. The way Ammachi comes to terms with a forced marriage and returns home eventually on her own terms makes up the end. Ammachi's younger friend, a girl who admires her spirit, narrates the story. This is the last part of the story. Only selected lines I am reading. For 8 days, Venkapaya was not at home. It seems he went to Tirupati once a year. Ammachi whispered to me that day, "Let's go into the python's room and see what it has hidden there." The first thing we spotted was Venkapaya's shirt hanging from a wooden peg. "Look at Venkapaya, swinging both his arms and hanging from the peg," laughed Ammachi. Standing some distance away, as if the very touch of the shirt was repulsive to her, she stretched her arm and removed the shirt from the peg. "Come, get me a pair of scissors and some thread and needle." I quickly fetched all the things Ammachi had asked for. She deftly cut up the back of the shirt. She sewed the front end, dislodged the buttons, and placing them haphazardly, stitched them into the cut end of the shirt. "That's it. It's ready. The buffoon shirt, special for Tirupati, returned." Venkapaya returned from Tirupati. Ho, ha, ho. He climbed the stairs, announcing his arrival. Handing the prasada to Sitate, Venkapaya said, "Have it, all of you." And then looking at Ammachi, he said, "It might straighten you out," and went to have his bath. Soon he came out saying, "Now eat, eat, eat. I am ravenous, but I'll wear my shirt and come." And then he went into the room. It was Ravana who came out from the room. "Where is that slut? That hussy, what arrogance, I'll ruin her." Panic-stricken at the sound of Venkapaya's voice, I had subdued up against a corner on the stairs, from where he picked me up as if I were a mouse. "Ammachi," I shrieked. Ammachi came out and, leaning against a window, stood laughing. "What?" she asked. "After going to Tirupati, have your eyes become strange? I have been here all the while. Can't you see? Why do you torture this child?" Venkapaya dropped me with the thud and growled. "What did you say?" He advanced towards Ammachi, caught her by the hair and dragged her into his room and shut the door. "Ayyo, ayyo, what is all this? I can't bear to see it, Venkapaya. Ye Venkapaya, open the door. Ayyo, the shrew," wailed Sitate as if her very heart would break. It frightened me to look at Sitate, who sat transfixed, leaning against a pillar as if dead. Sitate, in a voice full of pain, Sitate said, "Go child, go home. Don't tell anybody what you saw here. You won't tell you, will you?" School, now let me tell you what happened. Amachi and Venkapaya were married. Venkapaya opened his hotel in Tirupati. Amachi went away with him. School, home, only
Go ahead.
1 minute. School, home, between the two, one doesn't realize the number of days that pass. Then one day, whom do I see but Amachi? In the distance, Amachi, Amachi! I jumped from the window and ran. I took her hand back from her. We reached home. Sitate was standing at the doorway, her hands supporting her back, completely dumbfounded. "What?" she demanded angrily. What have you come alone, you whore? What did you do this time?" "What else was I to do except come alone?" Amachi said. "Your Venkapaya hanged himself." The only memory that lingers in my mind is the expression in Amachi's eyes as she wiped her face with her pallu. She was laughing from the corner of her eye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. So, we now open the floor to the audience, and if any of you have any questions for any of our writers here.
I am Dr. Chokkalingam, cardiologist. I really appreciate the way in which you have been giving. There are three people in the three spectrum. One in the same place, another one in the border, another one those who have gone out of the place, and then how they are narrating. Everything what you are listening, how we can make our life, in a way we can live in the best way possible. As a cardiologist, if you are going to interpret what you have been telling, you want to live more than 100 years. If a person has said he has gone out of this place, it's not the one that made you to go out, it's the one you are willing to go out. Don't do anything that give you happiness. Do everything with happiness. Your heart will work more than 100 years. The reason why I am communicating this one, the moment if you feel you are going out from the house,
Excuse me.
and then
Thank you so much. Is there a question?
one second, finish that. So why I am saying this? No. For that only I am telling. The moment if you feel the strain of out and then repatriated, it's nothing like that. It's not the punishment. You must appreciate and start living the life's way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Hello? Yes.
I have
Yes.
a couple
Go
of very quick questions. One is to Vaidehi. I read your Gulabi Talkies many years ago, almost by accident, and it was a wonderful experience. I was just wondering which of your other works might be available in English and what you would recommend one to pick up. And the second question is to Benjamin. I was just curious about what work you initially went out for, and whether you stayed with that kind of work or whether you changed subsequently alongside your writing. Thank you.
Right. So the question to you is, what was the work that you initially went out to do, and did you stick with that or did you change, right? Meaning, once you went to Bahrain. I suppose that is the question. And the question to Vaidehi is, what else is available besides Gulabi Talkies? What else is available in English, and what would you recommend?
So, OUP has published my Asprishru novel as Vasudeva's Family. And Jatra is also included in the women writers in India. I don't remember the name. It's an anthology of 5 women writers. It's also published by OUP. And the name is the fair. Which fair? Jatra. I don't remember the name, sorry.
No, but thank you.
It's published by the OUP.
Right, thank you. Benjamin.
Hello.
Okay, what was the work that you
Temple Fair.
initially, sorry.
Temple Fair, sorry.
Yeah, what was the work that you went out to do in Bahrain, and did you stick with that or did you change? I think besides being a writer, what else? Are you still, what is your day job, I guess? And are you still doing that, or did you become a full-time writer? I suppose that is what you'd like to know.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right.
Hello, madam. One question.
Can he answer that question and then we will come to you. Thank you.
I am a part-time writer because I am working as a project coordinator in a construction site, and I am a basically mechanical engineer. Meantime, the evening times only I am writing. I am too much proud on that, and I am too much lucky to mingle with so many labor class people from Bangladesh or Tamil Nadu or Kerala or Nepal, even from Philippines. So I do have a direct experience, one hand direct experience from the lower class people. I'm not sitting in an office, in an air conditioned office and like that. I am working in a humid stage in the construction site, and I am going around. And in the evening time, after reaching home, I become a writer. This is what my life is going on.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I think we have time for one more question.
Since you all are occupied on women and stories life, thanks for the product session. One question: being a woman, the crux and essence of women life, yesteryears, now and future, has changed or in evolutionary process in progress. Please, thank you. I am Ponnavalam Kalidas from Ashok, Madurai.
Right. So
thank you.
Maybe Sarah, ma'am, you can answer the question. The question, if we have understood it correctly, excuse me, is you would like to know whether the life of a woman has changed? Okay. Okay. So has the life of a woman changed, in your opinion, since Vedic times? Yeah. Over the. It's a very, very, very broad question. Yeah, how has it changed according to you?
ನಾನು ಬರಹ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದ ಬಳಿಕ ಅಂದರೆ ಬರಹ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭವಾಗುವಂಥ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ದಕ್ಷಿಣ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಶಾಲೆಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ಮನೆಗೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ಯಾರೂ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಶಾಲೆ ನೋಡಿಯೇ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ಬರಹ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ ಮೇಲೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಶಾಲೆಗೆ ಹೋಗಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದರು. ನನ್ನ ಕತೆ ಕಾದಂಬರಿಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭವಾದ ಬಳಿಕ ಕಾಲೇಜಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈಗ ಬೇಕಾದಷ್ಟು ಹೆಣ್ಣುಮಕ್ಕಳು ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಕಾಲೇಜಿಗೆ, ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಕಾಲೇಜಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆದರೆ ಇದು ಮೂಲಭೂತವಾದಿಗಳಿಂದಾಗಿ ಅವರು ಪುನಃ ಹಿಂದೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರ್ ಆದರೂ, ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಆದರೂ, ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಆದರೂ ಕೂಡ ಬುರ್ಕಾದ ಒಳಗೆ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಹೊರತು ಅದರಿಂದ ಹೊರಗೆ ಬರುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ನಾನು ಶಾಬಾನು ಕೇಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಶಾಬಾನು ಪರವಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಲೇಖನ ಬರೆದದ್ದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಮೂಲಭೂತವಾದಿಗಳು ನನ್ನ ಮೇಲೆ ಅಟ್ಯಾಕ್ ಮಾಡಿದರು. ಅದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಕೋರ್ಟಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಬೇಕಾಯಿತು. 4 ವರ್ಷ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಫೈಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ನಾನು ಗೆದ್ದೆ. ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಎದುರಿಸ್ತಾ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಆದರೆ ಈಗ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಕಲಿತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಶಾಲೆಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆದರೆ ಆ ಮನೋಭಾವ ಮಾತ್ರ ಬದಲಾಗಿಯೇ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನನಗೆ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಹಾಗೇ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಧಾರ್ಮಿಕ ಧರ್ಮಾಂಧತೆ, ಮತಾಂಧತೆಯನ್ನು ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಸ್ಪ್ರೆಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಈ ಮೂಲಭೂತವಾದಿಗಳು. ಅದರಿಂದಾಗಿ ಅದು ಹಿಂದೂ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಮರ ಮಧ್ಯದ ಕಂದಕ ಕೂಡ ಹಾಗೆ ಇದೊಂದು ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಒಂದು ಹಾರ್ಮನಿ, ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ವಾತಾವರಣ ಇನ್ನೂ ಕೂಡ ಸರಿಯಾದ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸೃಷ್ಟಿ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ.
Things have indeed changed, because at the time that she started writing, women, particularly Muslim women, were not even going to schools. Now women do go to schools, they do go to medical colleges and so on. But development in the recent times is that fundamentalism has pushed a lot of Muslim women back into where they came from. So this has been a very fundamental issue. And on the one hand, fundamentalism is pushing women back. On the other hand, there has been oppression from the clergy. For example, in the Shabanu case, when she wrote about it, she faced a lot of opposition from the clergy, and she had to fight a court case for that. So she feels that at this point of time, fundamentalism and its various ramifications have had a severe impact on the society in which she lives, and women in particular.
Right. Thank you so
I have
much.
another question for you, ma'am.
I'm sorry, we are
last
out
question.
of time.
Yes, one I have to answer, no?
Okay, sure. Yeah, with that, yes, of course. Yes. Yes, definitely. We will hear from Vaidehi how life has changed for the woman. But for the rest of you, I would really urge you talk to the authors after the session because we are out of time. Thank you so much. Yes.
It looks as changed but remains as the same. And the attitude of the society is not at all changed. And the fear, bhaya, in the women's world has increased. When I go out, we cannot be free. I cannot walk alone, even in daytime. Daytime has become night nowadays, and pralaya that is a pralaya for our part.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. On that wonderful note, we conclude the session, Stories South of the Vindhyas. Thank you so much for listening to us, and thank you, Benjamin, Vaidehi Rao, Sarah, and of course, Bhageshri, for being the translator of the session. Thank you very much. Thank you.